The Artemis's stunning new images that remind our divided world we are still one planet and have stoked the sense, at least for some, that there's got to be more to life than just getting through the day. The astronauts who actually just experienced that tremendous set of views, they went hundreds of thousands of miles away from our planet, hard to even conceive, and some of them reflected on how humanity does have Earth as this refuge floating in the black emptiness of space.
What struck me wasn't necessarily just Earth, it was all the blackness around it. Earth was just this lifeboat hanging undisturbingly in the universe. Planet Earth, you are a crew.
How about that? That kind of perspective circles back to the deeper questions I mentioned. What does it mean to be a conscious human? We know we have all this information these days. We have this technology, including new tech coming at us. We certainly have more tools to live than prior centuries, generations. But have we figured out any better how to live with depth or meaning? Some people do find the answer in their daily life, family, work, doing some good some of the time. Others in, of course, religious and spiritual outlooks. If you happen to watch the show, we were talking about religion and the Pope to start the show. We're coming at it from a different direction right now. But I say all this because a new book is tackling the available knowledge of consciousness itself. Is it basically just information processing? Which then becomes a question about the precise role of feelings. We hear about AI consciousness. That's being taken more seriously these days. The phenomenon of feeling is finding its way into scientific thinking about consciousness, though. The book that I'm quoting is by New York Times veteran and acclaimed author Michael Pollan. He shaped public views on food and drugs with best-selling books you might have heard of, and he's now taking this journey into consciousness itself. He explores what are 22 theories of consciousness that often treat it as a computational operation conducted by our brains, sort of an operating system, but also questioning the reductive faith of our time, a belief that the brain is a computer, basically, that conscious awareness emerges somehow from that processing of information, he writes. And he asks if that is too limiting, if consciousness might encompass something deeper or harder to measure and perhaps push even beyond just us humans having it to include other living things. I'm thrilled to tell you that our special guest now is Michael Pollan, the New York Times bestselling author, professor of science and journalism at the University of California, Berkeley. Welcome.
Thank you, Ari. Great to be here.
Great to have you. I've read a lot of your books. This one is really weird. So I'll start with my real question. Sometimes, you think, what's the question? Here's my question. What are you talking about?
I'm talking about something we all know better than we know anything else, that we are conscious humans. There's nothing we are more sure of. Everything else we know through consciousness. We infer. We have to infer it, even the material world. Yet we don't understand it. It's a weird paradox that we could be so... science has yet to answer how it is that you have subjective experience, that you have a voice in your head. And I thought that we knew more when I embarked on this journey. I wanted to see what science had to say. But it turns out that we haven't even shown that brains generate consciousness. That's been the assumption. It may be something very different than that.
You mentioned the voice. Most people can relate to that. And so to be very simple, if you go to a doctor for a certain problem in your heart or parts of your brain, you can then get a visual readout where they say it looks good or there's a problem.
Yeah.
You're reminding us there's no scan to show the voice, and we know the voice is there.
We do. We have no doubt about it. It doesn't show up on any scans. Our assumption is that somehow consciousness is what's called an emergent property of having a lot of brain cells. But the more I looked at that word emergent, it really is a lot like abracadabra.
Okay.
It's hand-waving, and it may work very differently. There are people, including some pretty serious scientists I interviewed, who think maybe consciousness exists outside our brains. And the function of our brains is to channel it, almost like a radio receiver. And so we're tuning into consciousness. We're not actually generating. I know, it's a crazy idea.
So that can appeal to people both as spirituality. We're tapping into something.
And something collective, too,
right.
Something we share.
It also could appeal to people who are versed in a more traditional religious system, because someone might hear you say that and say, okay, Mr. Pollan,
That's God.
you're talking about Jesus.
Yeah.
And that it's out there and you're just tapping into it. So what did your research take you to on that pursuit?
We can't answer that question. We don't have the science. In fact, there's a real problem studying consciousness, that the only tool you have to use to study consciousness is consciousness.
Bummer,
so
yeah.
you can literally not get outside it. You can't get that God's eye view of the problem. That's one problem. The other problem is we've organized our science, going back to Galileo, who said science is going to be about the objective, quantifiable, third-person reality. And we're going to leave to the church subjectivity, the first person, qualitative things. And he did this because he didn't want the church, the church was going to come down on him. It did anyway. But I mean, he protected science for many, many years. So we have inherited a kind of science that's just ill-equipped to deal with subjectivity, can't get into your head. That's a big limitation.
Well, in that sense, this book, and reading it, and this may not be a compliment, but you can take it because you're such a best-selling author. It was very epistemological.
That's fighting words.
It felt so often about how do we know what we know, and wait a minute, we don't even know what we know, which is why I think you'd be a big hit, like in any dorm room, right? Because you're like, but do we even know that? And so, is that a loop where by the end of the book we say, wow, maybe we're not there yet? Are we? And this isn't meant like a cop-out, but are we looking at a problem that, for all of the tech we hear about, we're not in the right century to resolve?
That may be, but there's a lot we do know about consciousness. We may not know how it is created, how it's generated, but we know, you have this interior space in your head where you can think whatever you want. It's completely private. It's this incredible gift. And we know that you have it, and we also know that we're all squandering it. That our consciousness has been polluted, really, by modern life in various ways. We have a president that commands our attention to an incredible extent. I mean, we're forced to think about him every day. We have social media that has found an algorithm that allows it to hack our attention, and that. Obviously, when you're scrolling on social media, you're conscious, but minimally so.
Well, you can even feel that if you come out of a social media lane or a certain type of trash TV, you're almost in a bit of a fugue state when you kind of stop watching.
Yeah.
You write about how we actually break through that. You write about moments of awe.
Yeah. And
you say that could be family, that the awe of looking at a child and just being completely reset, or nature.
Yeah.
Or you say psychedelics and some stuff.
Too.
So reading from the book, you say in the crudest chemical terms, cocaine and caffeine are exploit drugs. And then you talk about LSD as an explore drug. It helps restore the adult brain, the plasticity and the numinousness of childhood. No coincidence, psychedelics soften or dissolve even the sense of self.
Yeah, I mean, that's another dimension of consciousness that's really interesting. The most interesting product of consciousness is our sense of self. That is generated by our consciousness. And we have very paradoxical feelings about this. We celebrate self-esteem. We want our kids to be self-confident. Yet we spend a lot of time escaping self. Some of the highest experiences in life are when we transcend our sense of self. Awe is a classic example. Awe shrinks the self. We're in awe. I mean, the astronauts have this, they call it the overview effect, and they have this powerful sense of oneness. So the self is an important thing. It gets your TV show done. It gets me to write books. Very, very useful. On the other hand, it traps us because it builds walls. And we want nothing more than to bring those walls down and merge with something larger,